Welcome to the GeekBits podcast with your hosts, Mike, David, and Craig. This video is sponsored by PCBWAY, so before we get started, let's thank them for supporting us. If you're not familiar with PCBWAY, their goal is to be the most professional PCB manufacturer for prototyping and low-volume production work in the world. New customers get a $5 bonus on their first order. Thank you, PCBWAY.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the GeekBits podcast. Today we're going to talk about a topic: has the internet made us dumb? Which seems counterintuitive because, we have like the sum of human knowledge at our fingertips, but is it making us smarter or is it actually making us dumber? And so that's what we're going to talk about.
So, boy, guys, this is going to be hard for me.
It's a loaded topic.
It's a loaded topic, man.
I've got strong opinions here.
I do. So, I remember when we were in our early 20s. You might not have actually been in. How old were you when you first started using the internet? Like not when you first heard about it, but like when it was a reality for you.
Probably 18, 19.
I was going to say, I thought you were still a teenager. So for me, I was like 3 years older. So I think I was like 20 or 21. And then I really got into it, obviously, when we started working at AST and we had dedicated internet connections on all the time and all of that. But I was certain that the internet was going to be sort of like the savior of humanity, because I thought all of this information is now available and anyone can go get it. And I knew that more and more information, especially when Wikipedia was created, and I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I see where this is going to go, and all this knowledge and information is going to be available. And yet now, looking back on it, so that was in let's say 93-ish time frame, 1993. Now looking back on it all these years later, I feel like exactly the opposite has happened in many, many cases. The internet, all that knowledge is there and nobody cares about it. Like they're not looking at it. It's like it's not there. And then also...
So dig into that a little bit. What do you mean by the knowledge? People act as if the knowledge is not there.
Okay. So a couple of things. So again, this is going to be a loaded episode. So if you guys all unsubscribe, I'm so sorry. First of all, okay, let me back this up a minute. When we were kids growing up, there was very few places that we could get our information from. So we would get our information from our parents in a lot of cases, like our mom and dad would tell us something, or you might get information from a school teacher, or someone like a leader in your church or religious organization. There weren't a whole lot of places to go get information. Now,
library.
I was just about to say, you could go down to your local library and you could read some books, but those, honestly, at least the libraries we had, we grew up in a little town called Mansfield, the library was tiny. And so the choices of books were few and far between. I suspect if I lived in a place like New York City where we had massive libraries or something, that might have been a little different. But living in a small town didn't have a lot of information. So,
I'm going to expand on that because it's something I've talked about a lot privately. But even if we went to the library, if you had a question about something, let's say you had one question, it was maybe about nuclear physics or something like that. You couldn't just ask that question. You had to look through a card catalog, pick out a few books that you
might have that information.
Maybe have the answer.
Then maybe look in the index of the book to try to get something near that topic or something.
Yeah, but the point is, it was a pain to find the information. Today, you can just type it into Google or Wikipedia, whatever, and within 10 seconds, you've got most likely, if it's if you're looking for a factual piece of information, and we're not talking about an opinion or
right.
like a political thing or something, but if you wanted to know something about science, like established science fact, then you can look it up and you can have the answer almost immediately. Where I might spend hours in a library trying to answer one simple question. Honestly, most of the time it wasn't worth the trouble.
Yeah, and a lot of topics were censored back then. Let's be honest. You know, so like if you were trying to find out something about a specific religion, or something like I don't know, homosexuality or something, those topics were highly what's the
controversial.
word? Well, controversial, but what's the word when you like if you're on an e-commerce site, you're laying it out and making certain not syndicated, but not cultivated. Oh well, there's a word for it. I can't. Curated. The content at your local library was highly curated by the people in your community, right? It wasn't like the government said every library is going to have these sets of books, and you're going to be able to learn.
And if there was a book in there that people didn't like, they would protest, and the library would remove it.
Right.
And it may have information that they don't want you to know.
Yeah. So in a little town like Mansfield, you were probably not going to find a book about Hinduism or something like that in the library.
Not a lot of sex ed books.
Yeah, not a lot of sex ed books, right? Because it was highly censored and curated by the people of that community. And so the internet came along and changed all of that. Oh, and by the way, I want to make one more point about the whole growing up. So my parents were obviously very religious. And they spent a lot of their time trying to teach me to believe in the religious things that they believed. And so a lot of the information that they would give me, like my dad, for example, spent hours and hours and hours trying to teach me that the planet Earth was only 6,000 years old, as an example. And so people had to rely a lot on the information that they got from their family as fact, and maybe it wasn't. And then, the same thing for, well, I think I made my point. I'm gonna move on. So
I'll elaborate on that.
Okay.
So the point is, as a kid in that time, you had your parents telling you one thing. The school might be teaching you something else.
Right.
The parent would be saying, "Oh, the school's brainwashing you with lies." Who do you believe, and how do you even verify that information? Right. It was a difficult thing to deal with.
I remember this is probably my first experience of cognitive dissonance as a kid. I was probably 12 years old, and I went into the Mansfield Public Library and got a book on how the universe was made, and it was Big Bang Theory. It was a science book for kids, and explained, the evolution of the universe from the Big Bang, and how, planets formed from gases and stars and all this stuff. And I got pissed as a kid. I was like, where is God in this particular scenario? Because that's what I had been taught, in my local church and everything.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really have the exposure at that point to a science-based look at the how the universe was
exactly. So, and I think everybody knows about me, but it's worth reiterating for if you're a new listener, is I am very much about nothing should be censored ever. Like the second something is censored is the second you should start questioning, right? That's okay, if somebody doesn't want me to know this, I need to know why they don't want me to know it. And so I believe that all information should be open and free, and people should be able to read and make their own decisions. And so the internet, quite honestly, accomplished that, and it accomplished it very quickly. But I didn't expect what followed after that, and that was the campaigns of disinformation. And disinformation is now everywhere. So, yes, you have a pocket computer, your phone, right, that has the answer book to all of the great sum of human knowledge. But now it's a great sum of disinformation. Right. And you have to dig through it and try to figure out what's real and what's been, and a lot of it, look, I'm just going to say it. A lot of the information has been, the internet is under assault by political agenda. And I don't give a shit whether I don't care whether you're a Republican. I don't care whether you're a Democrat. Both parties, the libertarians are doing it. other political organizations in other countries, the Russians, everybody has a political agenda, and they're weaponizing the internet, they're weaponizing social media to drive disinformation and make you want to believe certain things are real and certain things are not. And so the answer book in your pocket has become now almost as bad as it was when we were kids, of being able to find the information you want and knowing whether it's real or not.
I'd say there's one significant difference is you have multiple sources of information or of misinformation. So, you have flat earthers, you have
Absolutely.
all kinds of, conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And there's just not really as much authority, like right or wrong in the 80s. It's like, well, the government, the library, the school, the church, those were your authorities. The newspapers were your authorities. Like, you couldn't just start your own newspaper. You had to have, then there was strict, rules about good journalism and things like that.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I'm so glad you brought it up because I was going to say it and then I forgot to. There was in the 70s, and before, there were laws around reporting and the fact that you had to report equally and you had to report on both sides of a topic, and you had to I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but it basically said you weren't supposed to lie about things, right? If you
Right.
knew that a piece of information was a lie, you weren't supposed to report it as a fact.
And you're supposed to redact it later.
Yeah.
if
And you're supposed to
corrected.
redact it, and you had to publish it in the same paper. And there was
And journalists were these trained experts that went to school
Yes.
for this particular career, whereas now anybody can start a blog on why their
Well,
dog comes
and-
from space.
and we removed that law, and so that law doesn't.
Oh, I didn't
exist
realize
anymore.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so now there's no truth in reporting of any kind whatsoever from a legal perspective. Fox News or whoever your favorite provider is, CNN, whoever they are, can publish literally anything they want, and they don't have to.
Now they could still get sued.
They can be sued civilly,
Right.
especially if they, slander or something like that,
Right.
right? But if they just report some fact, like if they say, I'll just make something up. If they say that H2O is actually carbon dioxide and not oxygen, right? Not water, I mean. Then there's nothing that they can't be sued for that, and there's no law. They're not breaking any law by publishing that, even though it's false, right? So that has made the internet make us all dumber. It has. I mean, and we just barely have scratched the surface of this thing, guys.
Yep.
Yeah, because you can find just about any particular opinion,
Right.
and it looks authoritative. I mean,
Right.
there's-
I unfortunately know a number of conspiracy theorists that believe in some really crazy stuff. I know several people that believe in chemtrails, for example. And I've had a number of discussions with them. And of course, the first thing they want to do is send me a link to either some YouTube video or some website that supports their conspiracy.
Yeah.
And of course, I can spend the time to break it down and explain why each and every one of these little things is wrong. But they're usually not really that interested to hear the science, as to why their belief is wrong.
Do you feel comfortable telling the story about the telescope and?
No, I thought I told it before, but I'll tell it again.
Yeah, because I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. So, so I knew this guy. I don't really associate with him much anymore. But several years ago, I knew this guy who was totally believed in chemtrails, and we had so many arguments back and forth.
Maybe you
about
should
it.
just really quickly, because I know not everybody listens.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So there's people that believe the conspiracy theory, and what they think is when you look up at the sky and you see an airplane, usually like an airliner, leaving a trail behind it. Now, in science, we would call that a contrail, which a condensation trail. But there's this group of people. Actually, the conspiracy theory was created as a joke.
It's a joke.
To make fun of conspiracy theorists, and then it actually, ironically, became a
The
conspiracy
same
theory.
thing happened with this thing called birds are not real. Have you heard about
Yes.
that?
So anyway, so the conspiracists believe that the planes are spraying chemicals on us, and
as some kind of mind control agent. Or
there's a
something like-
variety of different
Variety of reasons.
theories as to what they think it might be. Some of them believe it's mind control to placate the so we don't uprise against the government. Some think it's some kind of geoengineering, like it's runaway We've got runaway global warming, so they're trying to stop it, but they're not telling us what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, for
some
whatever reason.
people I have heard say it's.
I wish that one was real. Like,
Yeah.
actually have something like that to fix global.
I have heard some people call it the gay spray. That like that's why people are gay, is because they're spraying this chemical in the.
I've also heard population control, like the government's it's going to kill us all. Like we're just like half the population is going to die one day, but the politicians have some kind of vaccine or anti thing to cure them from whatever they're spraying, so that the rich people live and all the poor people die. I've heard a number of different beliefs on chemtrails. Of course, it's all ridiculously preposterous when you try to break it down. But even the science is so incredibly flawed. And so that's what I kept arguing about with this one guy. For months on end, he would write me on like Facebook Messenger or something. So, well, the thing you said can't be true, and he'd give some, again, point me to some website or some YouTube video, and I'd go watch it, and I'm thinking like, no, it doesn't work that way. And I would try to explain why all these things are ridiculous. In many ways, it's almost like trying to argue with a kid about whether Santa Claus is real or not. I mean, for everything you say, they've got some reason they can explain why Santa Claus is, why you can't find him at the North Pole, and all these kinds of things. And
Magic.
Anyway, so a lot of what conspiracy theories always boil down to is when you start whittling away the facts with science, the end result is you get so far down the rabbit hole. Well, they'll basically just start saying, well, you know what, David, you've been fooled. They're lying to you, and it'll get ridiculous. The teachers are lying. The college professors are lying. The government's lying. All the science books are lying.
Well, I've had these discussions even about like climate change and global warming.
Right,
I'm like,
it's the same thing.
It's like you would have to have so many different scientists and so many different organizations across all these different countries all saying the same exact lie about global warming.
Yeah, look, if there's anything we've learned, the government can't keep a secret. Right?
So
When you got to
anyway,
have 100,000 people in your
much less hundreds of governments keeping.
Yeah.
So the story Mike wanted me to tell is with this guy. One time we were talking about because I'd asked him, well, like when you're riding on a jet, do you see? If you're on a rear seat or something, have you ever seen a trail coming out of like the wings or something? And and then he told me something that kind of took me by surprise. He says, "Oh, commercial airliners don't spray chemtrails. It's only secret black painted government jets that spray chemtrails." And I'm like, "Oh, well," I said, "that should be easy enough to debunk." I said, "I have a reflector telescope here at my house. I have used it to actually look at airplanes before up in the sky." I said, "Why don't you come over?" Because that particular day was one of the days where the atmospheric conditions was very perfect for creating these long condensation trails. And so they were all over the sky. At that particular time, you could see several planes flying through the sky, leaving a trail.
But you needed to
them.
find a black jet.
So I said, "Hey, look, we've got several planes leaving trails right now." And he only lived a few miles from me. I said, "Why don't you come over? We'll get the telescope out. We'll look at these planes and see if they are black government jets, or do they say Delta Airlines on the side, or
And he said something about they don't have windows. We'll see if they have windows.
Yeah. So, and then I said, and then we can also do something else. Once we see the jet, we can pull it up, and I forget what it's FlightAware. Yeah, we can actually look and see what plane it is. We can even see if it's landing at DFW Airport, and we can drive down and even see that plane after it's landed. So we can actually.
This is really involved. You're like,
well, this is called science, buddy. This is how you do it.
So I said, if you really believe that it's only black secret government jets that leave these trails in the sky, we can actually. We can right now either prove or disprove what you believe. All you got to do is come over. Like we can, and we'll have the answer.
Yeah.
And he thought about that for a second. He said, "No, I don't really want to come over and look at it." And that was kind of the end of the conversation.
Why?
Because he knew that it might possibly disprove his years-long belief of the conspiracy. And so that was a teaching moment for me that day, because that was the day I realized that conspiracy theorists don't actually want to know the truth. They only...
I think, yes, in the context of this conversation, of this story, conspiracy theories don't actually want to know the truth, but a lot of people don't want to know the truth, whether they're conspiracy theories or not.
Well, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That goes back to cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, we as human beings have trouble accepting new information if it conflicts with beliefs that are tied to our identity. So if you have a
Absolutely.
religious identity, a political identity, a cultural identity, and something conflicts with that, you're going to ignore any new information and hang on to any old
Right.
information.
See, I would have thought, and obviously I think different from a lot of people, but I would have thought if I believed something and I've been arguing with somebody over and over and over again, and I just totally believed it to be true, and now I'm presented with an opportunity to prove what I believe
Right.
to the other guy, I should take that opportunity. But
Right,
it
because
turned
he
out,
could have proved you wrong.
right. In his mind, he should have. That's what I thought he would be thinking. But in reality, he looked at it more like, oh, I could maybe prove him wrong, but I might get proven wrong myself. And maybe he didn't cognitively think that, but somewhere in the back of his mind, he clearly became afraid
Right.
that his entire belief system could be torn
Because at that
apart.
point,
crumbled. Yeah.
you were attacking his identity. It wasn't about the information; it was about his identity.
Yeah.
Um,
And then this goes back to what we're talking about on the internet. He had been fueled by all of these disinformation and conspiracy theory websites that told him exactly what he wanted to hear. And I was going to tell him things he didn't want to hear. And
well, I think there's also a problem with a lot of the conspiracy theories and different belief systems like this. And a lot of it does come from the internet. It's sort of this appealing idea that I have the secret knowledge.
Right.
You, as the unenlightened
or the
person,
sheep. Yeah. Or sheeple or whatever.
right?
Yeah.
You're just a sheep, and you don't have the secret knowledge that I have. Where it's
I
like,
will tell you this though, Craig.
I'm not special for knowing that the moon landing happened. Like that doesn't make me awesome.
Yeah.
It's just basic, history and science.
Yeah, I will tell you this though. I mean, I think people like me and you and David, like we are on a quest for truth,
Right.
And I don't care that I learned that something that I believe to be true today is not true, or right, like if somebody and look, all I require is evidence. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's politics, religion, or how the atom works or whatever it is. All I require is show me some evidence, and then we'll go from there. Now, it can't be falsified evidence, right? And we'll get into that in a minute. But I always want to learn where I'm wrong in life and where I can expand my knowledge base. There are plenty of people who all they're looking for is reinforcing an existing belief. Yeah. And the internet has allowed that to happen.
Well, I think what Craig said, I'm going to expand on that. So he's talking about the identity thing. And I'll give you an example of that. So if a scientist comes out and he proves string theory, or if he proves like some quantum gravity or thing like that, and the whole science community will be up, yeah, we've finally proven this. And you know what? But your average person doesn't care because it really doesn't affect them. But if someone comes out and proves something controversial like evolution, well, I mean, I'm not saying that's not proven. I'm just, but you know what I mean? If a scientist says something that other people don't like, suddenly the disinformation campaigns start because exactly what Craig said, it affects their identity. And the truth no longer is important.
I think the three of us are fairly open-minded, like you said, truth-seeking people. But I am the first one to admit I struggle with this. When somebody presents me with conflicting beliefs, and it has to do with my political or religious identity or cultural identity or just how I grew up, I really have to force myself. Like it's an emotional toil for me.
It's so funny. I was talking to David about this the other day before the podcast, and it's like I don't seem to have that thing in my psyche. Like, for example, like I remember, this is the example I told David. I remember our dad, he was really into football. And oh man, he always had to watch the Cowboys. And I remember like sitting on the couch, and I didn't really care much about sports. I don't know why, but I've never been into just
me either.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I remember I would sit there.
Because we're three dorks.
No, no, I would much rather watch Star Wars than football, right? So, but anyway, I remember, one time vividly, my dad was yelling at the TV screens about some referee called something wrong, and they just have it out for the Cowboys or something like that. He said, and I was sitting there watching it, and I'm like, no, actually, they screwed up. It was the Cowboys should have been, the whatever it was, the penalty or whatever, they should have gotten this. It was and my dad had lost all perspective on it. It was like the Cowboys were his team, and they could do no wrong, right?
Yeah.
And a lot
Which
of
is how he approached a lot of his life.
it is, and a lot of people are like that. And I always try to be open-minded and have a perspective about things where I can look at it and say, oh, yeah, this is the right path, and this one's not, and it's okay.
But I definitely feel that resistance when I'm in an argument with somebody, and I have to kind of constantly remind myself, like, well, could I be wrong here? Is there new information that I could be exposed to?
Yeah.
Even though I don't like this feeling of I could be wrong or I may have to change my mind about something. And if I struggle with that, how much more do just regular people that don't really think about this kind of stuff, like they don't have this meta thinking of like, well, how am I perceiving this world, or how am I trying to find the truth? They're just going along with what they've been told, and they have even more of an instinct to just kind of double down on whatever theory they already believe in.
Yeah, yeah. I have a crazy family member that told me one time, I will not say the name, but told me one time about his religious belief, a specific religious belief, that there was absolutely nothing in the world that would ever change his mind, no matter what. And I said, so if your God appeared to you right now in this room in front of the two of us, and like magically appeared, so that you knew he was God.
Light and siren.
Yeah, light and like the heavens like opened,
Yeah.
and this God appeared in front of you, and he told you were wrong. Would you believe it? And he goes, no, that would be Satan trying to trick me. And so once you have made up your mind that you're not changing it.
That kind of makes me think that God is really inside of you.
Yeah.
The real God that you're believing in is not an external objective.
Funny that he
creator.
believes that your God is exactly what you want him to be. Yeah.
So I wanted to tell another story too. It's not so much a story as a collection of stories, but one of the things I became with this whole internet made us dumb thing, I think this started maybe 10, 12, 13 years ago when Facebook was becoming very popular. One of the things I started to notice was the political memes.
Oh, yeah.
And I, of course, for those that don't know, I'm a very moderate person. I flip-flop between political parties. I vote Libertarian, Republican, Democrat. I'm not tied
Whoever
to
has the best plan at the time.
I'm not tied to a specific party. I recognize each side has things I think are good and bad and whatnot. So keeping that in mind, I have a lot of friends and family on social media that are very polarized to one direction or the other. And I'd see these internet memes that they would post. And there was some particularly people I'm not even friends with on Facebook anymore because they would just post 10 of them a day. And
An hour.
and the thing is, at the particular time, I believe Obama was in office. Now, I actually didn't vote for Obama, but I had this one friend who would post anti-Obama memes like every hour. And the thing about it is, I would look at that and I'd be okay, that's not true. That's not even remotely true. I can disprove that. And so I would, link him to Snopes or Wikipedia. And of course he would say, oh, well, you can't trust those. Those are liberal websites.
Right.
They're all lying to you. So, oh, okay. Well, how about this article from, a source you trust or whatever. And then rather than accept that the meme that he posted was wrong, what would he do? He would call me an Obama lover. And I'm like, dude, I didn't even vote for this guy. I mean, but I see that you're posting stuff. I mean, if he's as bad as you say, why do you need to make up
Isn't there
stuff?
a logical fallacy named after that? Like, it's one of the logical fallacies, like, where you're shifting the argument.
You attack the person instead of the...
Yeah, there's ad hominem.
Yeah.
But there's also one where you just completely change the subject. Like, well, what about this other thing?
Straw man.
Yeah, you're a Obama lover. It's like,
Yeah.
well, okay, but that isn't.
Well,
But
I
even if you
might be
were-
or I might not be, but what does that have to do with the argument?
Yeah.
But the point is, no matter how many times I corrected his memes, which I shouldn't have even had to even do because I'm basically like correcting his memes over the guy I didn't even vote for.
Right.
If
anything, he would have trusted your opinion
you would think
more.
he would trust me more since I didn't even vote for the guy, right? But yeah, there was let me be clear. I also had another friend that was a Democrat who was always posting similar type memes for any kind of a Republican in office, and I was often having to to correct them as well, because these political memes are almost always false. Almost, I mean, anytime you see a little picture with something funny that says something bad about the other political party, 99 times out of 100, it's some kind of logical fallacy. And
or
whether
just evidentially wrong, or it's exaggerated.
Sometimes it's exaggerated. Sometimes it's a straw man argument. Sometimes it's completely fiction.
So our aunt posted back. This has been several years ago. Posted this a video of Trump, and he was. I don't remember what it was. I don't think it was a State of the Union address, but it was a speech he was giving. And it was a very similar thing. He said something about he was like started naming off all these facts about why he's trying to dispute why we were doing something we were doing. And he's like named off, the population of this city is such and such, and we only import, so much oil from there. And like it was on I don't know what it was, let's say 25 barrels. I'm making up numbers, right? 25 barrels of oil from there a month. It's not about oil, blah, 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 blah. And he names all these things off. And my aunt posted this on Facebook, and she said, see, this is, And so I just took every one of those facts that he said, and I just Googled them. I said, what's the population of this city? And, he said it was like 25,000, and it was like 150,000. And he said we only import like 25 barrels of oil from that country, and it was like 200 times that much.
Yeah.
And, and I just posted up, here's all the facts. This is what he said, and here's the actual facts. And I said, you're being lied to constantly. And, I'm not picking on Trump right now, but every politician does this in every party. And she replied to me and she goes, I don't care what the population of that city is. And I don't care how many barrels of oil we report. Those are irrelevant. He's still right. And I'm like, you can't connect the dots that he lied about 7 or 8 things here.
Right.
What else is he lying to you about? Right? That you do care about.
Because it goes back to that football metaphor.
Right.
It's like we're treating politics and the cultural wars as this is my team. My team is good. Your team is evil.
Yeah.
My team is the best.
I'm going to believe anything my team tells me.
Okay, so let's kind of bring this back to where we started. And David has this thing. I think it's from Futurama. He said that it's weapons grade bolognium.
Weapons grade bolognium.
Weapons grade bolognium. So all of these political parties, and it's not just political parties, it's businesses, like the big tech companies and the automobile manufacturers and stuff, they have started weaponizing the internet. And that is where a lot of these memes and stuff like you may not believe this, but a lot of the memes that political memes especially, that you like every day on Facebook or Twitter or your favorite, 9gag, wherever it is you go, there are actually people paid by super PACs to make those all day long.
Right.
And so it's like you think, ha ha ha, one of your friends made up that meme. But in many cases, it's not true. There was somebody actually paid to make that meme to help spread disinformation. Yep. And so that is why, back to my aunt's story, everything has to be checked and to see if it's true or not. And because if you listen to one little lie and 2 little lies and 3 little lies, all of a sudden you just listen to all of them and you don't care anymore. You're happy in your disinformation that you live in. And so you have to learn.
The internet memes taught me a lesson. Like I said, when those first started coming out, I just was so baffled why people would continue to share these. And again, I'm not picking on a particular political party because it was both sides doing it.
I've received it from both sides.
And like every single one of these memes is fake. And I got so tired of constantly fighting with these people over all this baloney they would. I'm like, why can you not fact check this before you repost it? And because most of them, I think, honestly, they just saw it and say, hey, this looks good. I like what this is saying. It supports my belief. Repost. And I think that's the thought process that most people have. They're not questioning like, I wonder if this is true. Let me check, then repost it. And you know what happens if you do that? You'll almost never repost
repost a political meme. Absolutely.
I used to repost political memes, and I got attacked for some of them, and some of them were actually that I reposted.
You were wrong.
I found out it was wrong about, or it was exaggerated or whatever. And so then I started doing that. Like I'd occasionally research the meme or research somebody that's even from my political perspective. Like I agree with them, but they're posting a meme. I'm like, I agree with your party, but that's still BS.
Yeah,
right.
It's funny you say that because
So I just got done with posting political stuff at all.
I don't post or repost any political memes. And by the way, if you follow my page, I pick on both parties pretty heavily, right? But I don't post anything that has like data and stuff in it anymore because I don't feel like I have the time to go fact check it all. But I like to post stuff that is hypocrisy, right? That points out hypocrisy. It's like you said this. And then 10 days later, you said this, and I love to post those so that I can show people the hypocrisy of things.
Right, or just self-contradiction,
Yeah.
I think another question we should be asking, like, besides has the internet made us dumb, which I think we could go farther into, has the internet made us less happy? Because a lot of this stuff we're talking about with, these political arguments on Facebook and just the outrage, all of which, again, we could do a whole episode on the advertising industry and social media and stuff like that.
We are going to do an episode on how social media has destroyed things, and it's going to be great.
Or just like how it works. But a lot of this...
Yeah, and how it works, for sure.
It is rage generation because these political memes,
it's
memes.
manufactured outrage. I talk about this all the time on Facebook and Twitter, on my personal accounts, that these companies are manufacturing outrage to get you riled up to support a certain thing. It's horrible.
Or just for ad revenue. Just because you're more likely to share or click something, and you're more likely to engage with the content because it's outrageous to you. And therefore, you will see more ads, even if they have nothing to do with your political.
Yeah, that's something that we can say about social media without going into a whole episode about it. Is that you have to understand two things about social media. One, you're not the customer; you're the product, right? They're selling you, and they're selling you to advertisers. The only way that a social media company makes money is to sell ads, right? And the way they get ads is views, and the way they get more views is getting you to share stuff and post stuff, right? So it's in social media. A lot of people like to say, well, social media, they're all just, evil companies, and they're trying to... No, all they want to do is generate traffic. They don't give a rat's rear end how they generate that traffic, right?
It just so happens that hate and anger and outrage and stuff are really effective ways of hacking the human brain into generating traffic.
Again, the internet has made us dumb
and less happy.
So, I don't know if it's too early to try to answer the actual question of has the internet made us dumb, but what I'm going to say is I think it has made dumb people dumber and smart people smarter. Because the smart people will look objectively, they'll get the scientific information, the things that they want to read up on, the things that we just didn't have access to over time. The dumb people are the people that are going to spend all their time on conspiracy theory websites or highly polarized political websites or whatever, reading information that makes them feel good. And
so I'm curious. Do you when you say dumb people, do you mean actual people of low IQ, or do you mean people who are not well educated? There's a big distinction there.
It probably doesn't even have to do with the IQ itself. It has to do with the person's personality. Some people, like we talked about earlier, some people want to know the truth. Some people just want to know what makes them feel good. And I think there's smart people, like, when I say the word smart, I mean people like who could figure out, mathematical equations and, things like that. That are, they're not dumb. We're not talking about Forrest Gump here. We're just talking about people who have personality types.
Because I want to kind of refute what you said.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I understood what you meant. Because there are very intelligent people that get hooked up in what makes you feel good. I mean, there are very intelligent people who become drug addicts or sex addicts or other things like that, right? And that doesn't mean they did it because they're dumb.
Yeah. Well, I was using the word dumb as just a... I was trying to, you've heard that phrase, the poor get poorer. Sorry, I'm going to hit my microphone. So that phrase, the poor get poorer, the rich get richer. So I was trying to make an analogy of that, and that's what the internet has done to us from a perspective of information.
See, to me, it's not about dumb getting dumber or smart getting smarter. To me, it's about curiosity. Like, people that are curious are going to be more inoculated against misinformation and outrage and things like that. I have seen extremely smart people that are software engineers, doctors, they're in other types of engineering or mathematics, and they are still fundamentalist about a particular ideology.
Of course.
Or they hold conspiracy theories, or they disbelieve in scientific fact. It's not that they're dumb people. It's just they are.
It's a personality trait.
It's a personality trait, and they're. I think it goes back to that identity thing. Their identity is so closely tied.
You form these
to that
neural
group.
pathways, and they're very hard to change after you form them, right?
Yeah.
It's painful to change those pathways. Veritasium actually had a video that if you haven't seen it, everybody should go watch it. But about what happens in your brain and why it's hard to unlearn and change something after you've learned it, because your brain wants everything to be easy.
Right. And so you have to constantly be challenging yourself in order to absorb.
And I think, and Veritasium alluded to this, is the more you challenge yourself, the easier it is to change those pathways, because you kind of, it's like exercise, like making your muscles bigger.
Right.
You're stimulating your brain, and so I think there's something to that. Let's back up just a second though, because I feel like we kind of maybe missed out on some stuff. So you take the same information that like, I'm trying to come up with something that's non-controversial. I mean, I want to say something like, let's research vitamin C, but even then there's people who, in conspiracy theories, who will tell you that
Vitamin C will cure all kinds
vitamin
of
C
crazy
will cure
stuff.
everything, or pot will cure everything, or whatever it is. So I'm trying to find something.
No, pot just makes you feel like it's cured everything.
Yes, just feel like it cured everything. But I mean, even water's been weaponized. Like, you can't even research water. Oh man, this is
I know, because there'll be conspiracy theories. They'll tell you this bottle is
leaching plastics
into it, and that I know another. Well, I don't know him anymore. I've defriended him, but he was a conspiracy theorist that believed that they put this fluoride in the water for mind control purposes and stuff for your city water, and you can't drink the city water. You can only drink bottled water. But then I had another conspiracy theorist that said you can't drink bottled water because of the leaching thing, so you have to drink that. It's never
You could have skipped the middleman and just have them talk to each other. And not been
Here you
involved.
go. You guys get together. Let's talk about programming, like because that's something that you know about, Craig. So if I want to know, like, the right way to instantiate some kind of something or another in my favorite programming language,
Right.
there's a place I can go, and I just, like, it's not controversial. I go look it up, and I can read these 5 steps, and this is how I put it together in my program, and this is how it works.
It's generally not about identity.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
That's the thing. I see where you're going with that. It's like, generally, with a few exceptions. It's funny because, like, whether you're talking about programming languages or Star Wars, there are people that get very passionate.
Oh, yeah.
And are very tunnel vision of this is the one true right way. And I've seen it with programming and stuff. But generally, if you're starting out as a programmer, your identity is really not tied up to one particular technology or anything like that. You're just trying to learn how to get started in the industry. And it's actually, to your point, David, it's easier to get started in programming probably than it's ever been in history, because you can take an Udemy course, you can watch some free YouTube videos, you can go to the programming language website.
I think it's completely different than that, and I know where you're trying to go, but if I look up something on the internet about a programming language and how do I use this, like jQuery? How do I use jQuery? Like, how do I incorporate jQuery into my program? I am not going to go find a disinformation site that says, here's how jQuery really works. You're being lied to.
Right.
And all of that.
Yes, you are. It may not be jQuery. So I would say you're 90% right. You're probably not going to find that. But there are rare exceptions. So there used to be this site called OOP Oversold, and it was a complete bashing of object-oriented programming. And he makes a few good points. Like, there are valid criticisms of object-oriented programming. I don't think it's a silver bullet. I don't think it's, it solves every type of problem. But it's funny, even that, it was like very similar to the culture wars. It was very similar to like a political stance or something like that. Like, object orientation's bad. We've been lied to by the industry and that sort of thing. But for the most part, you're correct.
Okay.
Like, people aren't.
So
I just think it's amusing.
I'll take your point, but
you really have to be a super nerd to get into that kind of debate. Like you have to be really.
The reason I wanted to try to pick something that was like that and not something like the bottled water is poisoning
or
you with
chemtrails or
bleaching
whatever.
Yeah. And here's the difference in my mind. Here's what makes those different. There's no money to be made from it.
Yeah.
There's no money to be made from it. Me and you sitting here arguing about the where jQuery got its beginnings, and it was that guy. Oh no, it was really this guy over here. No one's going to make any money off of politicizing that or weaponizing.
Those kind of debates, you only see people that are really passionate in that particular narrow.
In fact, the very guy that I was talking about with the conspiracy theory there, he sold water filtration systems.
Of course.
So that was his.
So that's exactly it. So by saying that this plastic leaches harmful chemicals into the water, and it may or may not, I don't know. I haven't actually researched that. But that's a way to make profit on something, whether it's selling your own water or selling a filter or whatever.
It's gone from there's a problem out there and we are providing a product to solve it.
And in many cases,
we're going to create a problem.
Is manufactured.
Yeah, we're going to create a problem in your mind. And there's mainstream companies that do this all the time.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I can't think of an example.
Probably
right now,
90% of the stuff they sell at like those vitamin stores and stuff like that is
right.
So let's use pot because it's kind of an interesting one to me. So marijuana. So marijuana is like there's all these people who would have you believe that it cures if you just smoke pot every day, all of your ailments will go away. It cures cancer. It cures all like. Those things came out of the woodwork in an attempt to try to get more people on the bandwagon to get it legalized. Not because it really cures all those things or does anything, right? It's information or disinformation campaigns to drive an agenda. Now, I don't care where you stand on pot, whether it should be legal or not. I think it should be legal. I don't really care. But it's just another way of driving the almighty dollar. It's the same thing we talked about in the EV video. If you guys have not watched our video on electric vehicles and the future of vehicle manufacturing and the old legacy manufacturers, you absolutely should go check that out. It's a great conversation, but it's the same thing.
A lot about the
disinformation campaigns. There was a long time that like, for example, Fox News used to constantly push that Tesla was going to go out of business any day now, and push about how they were destroying, like batteries are so much worse for the environment and all these things that they push. And then one day, Elon and Fox News became buddies again. And all of that disinformation switched, and now they're Tesla's the greatest company. Buy their stock; it's going through the roof. It's like because there's money to be made. It was never, ever about anything but money. Short sellers and all of the stuff that people trying to figure out how to make money off that. So I believe, said all of that because I wanted to get to this point. I believe the internet has made us dumber, but it has made us dumber because of people trying to make money off the internet. That is where I believe it ultimately lands.
So, if we could go back in a time machine and tell, I don't know, famous scientists, Madame Curie or Albert Einstein, or even way back into antiquity, like Pythagoras or whatever, tell them, hey, in the future, if you want to know any piece of information, all you got to do is pull up this little thing in your hand, type in the question, and there'll be the answer. They would think, well, that's the greatest thing ever, because back then information was so hard to get spread to people who needed it. But if you also had to tell them, and for every piece of information you look up, there's also a piece of disinformation, and it's really difficult sometimes to tell which one is, especially if you're not super educated on the topic, it can be really difficult to tell which piece of information is the disinformation and which is the information. Then they might not be quite as excited.
So my daughter-in-law, she is, I think, 31. And I was having a conversation with her one day, and she showed me this, it was like an article on the web, and it was obviously some, it was like some random Joe Blow site that somebody spun up in their mom and dad's basement or something, and it was talking about something. I don't even remember what the topic was, but it was like so obvious to me as I looked at it. It was about physics. It was something to do with physics, and anyway, it was like, oh my gosh, this guy is like that's a conspiracy theory guy. And I showed her a video from Neil deGrasse Tyson. I said, watch this video from Neil deGrasse Tyson. He explains how this actually works, and you'll see what's going on. And she asked me, and it was something that I was not prepared for. She said, well, how do I know that Neil deGrasse Tyson isn't the scammer? How do I know that my guy is that I sent you? How do I know that he's the scammer and your guy's right? How do you know that Neil deGrasse Tyson could be the scammer and my guy's right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't really prepared for that because they grew up in an age of they get all their news from TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all of that.
Anybody can.
And anybody is to them authoritative, an expert.
And that's one of the big problems is like in journalism, in any kind of news or scientific thing. Like we're really the big question is like who has the authority here? Mm-hmm. Who is the real news site versus the fake news site?
Yeah,
who's a real scientist? Versus,
courts like to use the word who has standing. Right? Like who has standing? Like the guy that come up with this in his mom's basement at 17 years old who made a YouTube video doesn't have standing where a theoretical physicist that has like 4 degrees from super expensive colleges probably does.
And that's part of what's great about the scientific method is like if the guy in the basement does an experiment, let's say, like that disproves something in science, he can say, hey, go replicate my findings. Sure. Go do what I did and see if you get the same results. But you have to know which scientists are actually doing those kind of things.
And as this is something
it's hard for me just as a layperson to know who the authoritative
absolutely. And this is something I tried to explain to her, and this is actually something I tried to explain to our father before he passed away, but we never could get through to him on this. That's the whole purpose of, when we talk about peer reviews and things like that, and is you're trying to replicate the same results. Okay, you did this experiment, and these are the results, and yep, we did the experiment, we used all the same stuff, and guess what? We get the same results. This must be true. It's the whole thing about 97% of scientists agree. 97% of climate scientists agree that there's a problem with the climate, right?
Right.
And that's because they all got together and they took these papers and they said, okay, well, here's the information that they have. Let's see if the facts really hold up true when we check them.
And there's a system where it's like, if I can disprove you, that elevates my standing. Like if I repeat the experiments and come up with a different result, that is a net benefit. Like we're all trying to disprove the thing that you're.
And so my analogy or what I've kind of used this a few times with people. If there was a bridge, let's say that there's a bridge over, what's the lake near you?
Lake Worth.
Lake Worth.
Yeah.
So there's a bridge over Lake Worth. Mm-hmm. Actually, there is a bridge over Lake Worth. Let's say that the city bridge engineer, the county bridge engineer, and the federal government sends out the Army Corps of Engineers. And they all get together and they do some experiments on that bridge and they say, this concrete is failing. We need to stop driving traffic over this bridge because it's probably going to collapse pretty soon. And then one guy who's just some random Joe makes, like me or you, makes a YouTube video disputing that this bridge is just fine.
This is a conspiracy by the government to hurt my business or hurt this community over here or something.
Yeah, exactly. So when that happens, are you going to drive over that bridge? When they said it's probably going to collapse, don't drive over it. Well, that guy said it's okay. No, because the bridge engineers probably know, and the guy that's
right.
Right.
I'm going to trust the engineer.
Perfect sense. But one of the problems I've had, and in fact, our dad was one of the people that one of the many people who I've had this argument with. They'll say, "Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes the scientists are wrong," and that's correct. That's true. Sometimes they are. And so, sometimes there's been major scientific, what we thought was one thing for hundreds of years. And all of a sudden somebody figures out, oh, hey, that was wrong. And I can prove it.
Yeah.
And so they always ask the question, why should you believe anything that a scientist says because sometimes they're wrong? And that's a difficult question to answer sometimes. And on that same token, you can also make the case that sometimes the conspiracy theorists are right.
They are.
Very rarely, but sometimes they are. So that people can use that to make the case that you should ignore scientists and listen to conspiracy theorists. And, it's not a black and white answer. There is no black and white answer you can give someone and say, here's how you always know the difference between misinformation or disinformation or whatever and real information. So that's a tough one. And what I always like to say is I'm like, okay, you know what? You're right. Let's take Galileo or Copernicus or whatever. They said things about the way our solar system works that was completely contradictory to everything that people thought. And they sounded like crazy conspiracy theorists, at the time.
At the time, yeah.
And I said, but you know what makes them different from a conspiracy theory? They had proof.
That's what I was fixing to say. That's the difference in my mind is that yes, science is wrong sometimes, and yes, conspiracy theories are right sometimes. But the difference is, it's back to the whole peer-reviewed, test the same results. Can I test it?
I just
get
like
the same result.
The term proof because it has specific meanings in certain in mathematics. Proof is a specific thing. I think we're talking more about evidence. You have strong evidence.
Good.
And
yeah,
I look at it as like it's a numbers game. It's statistics, really.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to trust the scientific community, even though they're occasionally going to be wrong, because 90% of the time they're going to get it right.
Yeah, and I've heard people tell me too along the same lines that that scientist was paid off. Or all the scientists have been paid off. That's my dad used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
All of those scientists are on the government take, so of course they're going to say whatever the government wants them to say. It's like, okay.
Really, even the government that's run by Republicans?
I know. I would always refute and say, well, what's more likely that a scientist, by the way, scientists don't, like, people seem to think that these scientists are making, millions of dollars a year. They're like normal Joes, like me and you, like they make the same salary as like a computer programmer. They're not making millions of dollars off this science.
So what's more likely, a climate change scientist that makes, $80,000 a year or whatever for his job, or a giant oil company conglomerate that
Making
are both
billions.
Which one's most likely has incentive to spread disinformation?
Exactly.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. It all comes back to money.
Is often a good way. But the other thing I say is always when you look at the like you have two pieces of information, you're not sure which one to believe. Which one tells you everyone's lying? If that's their core argument, and they may not start off with that argument, but like I said earlier in the podcast, if you work your way down and you realize at some point their core argument is everyone's lying to you, then that's probably the disinformation.
Right.
And
that's a really good point. Yeah, it goes back to that concept of we have secret knowledge, everybody else is dumb and doesn't have it.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so we're at about the hour mark here. So let's kind of bring it all back and kind of break it down. Has the internet made the world dumber? Is Camacho gonna turn out to become, is Idiocracy gonna turn out to be a documentary, and we didn't even know it?
Well, we've been talking about the content of the internet, but I'd like to talk about like the internet itself and the devices this itself. Just briefly, one of the things we haven't talked about is all the problems with attention span on the internet. This predates the smartphone. So I've noticed this just anecdotally in my own life, that I used to be able to sit down, and lots of people have been reporting this, especially people our age.
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying. I know exactly where you're going.
I used to read books all night long. In high school, I'd read a book from like 8 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning, drag my rear into school, and fall asleep in Spanish class.
Yeah.
I'd stayed up all night reading a book that I was just engaged in. And now it's hard for me to sit and read an article for more than 5 or 10 minutes. It's really difficult.
So some of my favorite, there's some movie I watched recently that I just really loved. I can't remember what it was now. Anyway, I remember when I was watching this movie, I got a text message on my phone, and the next thing I know, I was like going back and forth in the text, blah 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 blah, and I looked up and I realized I've missed like 20 minutes of the movie, and I had to back the movie up and start where I left off. And I was like, I had this thought going through my head. It's like, this thing is like,
I could give you an even better example. My daughter, who is now 19, I don't think in her entire life she has ever watched a movie from beginning to end.
Oh my God.
Because she's always had the opportunity to grab the scroll bar and move it forward. And I've watched her a number of times. She'll like, I'm going to watch this movie. and she'll have like a 2-hour movie, and she'll just keep skipping forward because she'll get bored with some little scene or whatever. And by the time she'll watch a whole movie in like 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
And
that's crazy to me.
The same thing with TV shows and whatnot.
I can't even imagine.
But I've noticed this time and time again. And like I said, I think she's gone to the movie theater with us 2 or 3 times over the years, and actually watched the whole movie. But outside of that experience, I don't think
I will do that if it's the second or third time I've watched it, and I'm like, okay, I just want to see these scenes,
or I just hate this particular scene.
Yeah, or this section.
Sure,
but the
really
first time I
boring.
watch a movie, it's like
you have to watch the whole
if
thing.
I'm really bored 20 minutes into the movie or 30 minutes into the movie, I'm probably just not going to finish the movie.
Yeah, that's District 9 for me. I don't know how people love that movie.
Oh, I couldn't stand it.
So I have a couple of things that I researched before this that dive right into this problem of attention span. It's not necessarily intelligence, but it ties into intelligence because we need deep thinking and deep concentration for certain types of mental activities. So the World Health Organization, for example, recommends less than an hour for children 2 to 5 to use smartphones, tablets, or any kind of internet device. There's well-documented effects on attention span and the ability to focus on a single task, just like we're talking about.
No surprise.
There's another study that showed like workers that are interrupted by notifications and stuff like this, it's as if their IQ had dropped 10 points because of the interruptions, which is worse than smoking marijuana.
It is, and I actually read something that may be on your list that people that are driving a car who get constant notifications on their phone, like Facebook's popping up or text messages, whether they pick the phone up and reply to them or not, are the same at the same risk of an accident as a drunk driver.
Right.
I was wow. Just because of the distraction that you're constantly trying to look over at your phone beeping.
That's one of the things I do with my phone. Like, I don't have Messenger turned on with notifications. I don't have Facebook, Instagram, any of that stuff. I'm not actually on social media that much. I'm actually using it right now. I've got a Google Doc with the notes about this podcast.
It's funny you say that. I have almost all, like Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, like all of those have notifications disabled, like at the iOS level, right? Like I don't want any notification from your app whatsoever.
What's interesting, though, is I've noticed some of the social media apps are now nagging you when they detect that you don't have notifications.
Please turn it back on. This app won't function properly.
Right. And I'm like, no, I don't want you pestering me throughout my day. I want to all I want are text messages.
Yep.
And I'll tell you something else I have gotten like Nazi level when it comes to applications that I install. I don't care what it is. If I installed Solitaire the other day. It was a little free app on, and I just wanted to play Solitaire. And within 30 minutes of having that app installed on my phone, it was just sitting over there. I got a notification. I'm like, oh, what's that notification? Because I have everything turned off. So it's probably a text message or a phone call or a voicemail or something. And I pick it up, and it's, don't miss the next game of Solitaire or whatever. You know what I did? Deleted that app immediately.
That's exactly what
and I gave it a bad review.
If you look up, if you research any of this stuff, the stuff we're talking about is all things they recommend that you do to curate your attention span and your level of distraction with social media and internet usage. But I would suspect the vast majority of people are not doing this kind of stuff. And a lot of why this stuff works is like all these notifications and the way Facebook works with the little number in the upper right corner that shows you how many messages or how many notifications you've gotten. This all works on like a dopamine release cycle. They give you like little, it's like gambling, they've used the psychology. I mean, I think Zuckerberg admitted this, like they used the psychology from casinos, like well-known documented psychology, and applied it to building Facebook.
No doubt.
To keep you hooked on these devices and engaged in the content constantly. But this has a toll on our ability to do creative problem solving, that 10 points of IQ drop. It also has some pretty drastic effects on our mental health, which we could, maybe if we do a whole social media thing, we could get into the mental health aspects of social media and comparing yourself to other people. And
I think a whole social media episode is definitely going to be in the works. That's there's so much we can go into, especially about how the marketing works and how much they know about you. Okay, what else? What else is on your list? I want to make sure we cover it all.
I have more on here, but I feel like I should wait until that episode. A lot of it is about social media specifically.
Maybe that should be our next episode because it would tie good into this one.
This may be a good jumping off point into like some of the negatives of social media just in general.
Yeah, and by the way, I think there are some positives to it.
Definitely, yeah.
Right? I mean, it's connected me to people that I would otherwise have lost connections with, and people that I actually care about. And I will tell you that I actually did something recently along those lines, and we'll go into this in detail in that episode, but I went through, I had like over 850 Facebook friends, and now I have about 100. Yeah.
I did the same thing myself a few years ago because it had gotten out of control, and I was spending so much time. A lot of those were conspiracy theorists and whatnot. I was spending so much time arguing with them, and I wasn't getting very much work done. And one day, it just occurred to me, why am I spending the time to argue with people who really don't even want to know the truth to begin with?
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything for me other than make me feel good if I were to ever, get them to agree. David, prove me wrong, which is never going to happen. Right. And so, I eventually just defriended like hundreds and hundreds of people that, and just kind of kept it down to my local friends and family. And
if I don't actually know you in real life, you are no longer a part of my core social media. Now, I'm not like on Twitter and stuff I do for the Geek Pub, that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that. But if I don't actually know you on my personal Facebook, you are not going to be my friend.
And I get like 15, 20 friend requests a day on Facebook. And I don't know why everybody in the world wants to friend me on Facebook. But, I know
you're
it's
the man to go to about old computers.
Well, I know it's from my YouTube channel, but
I have had numerous people send me Facebook Messenger asking me why I don't friend them, like because I won't. And I've made this a strict policy, and it doesn't matter if we work together at a job. I'm not your friend, like on Facebook. I have a Facebook page called the Geek Pub. If you want to know what's going on in my social media life, that's where you go. Follow that page. I have a Twitter account. I tweet, 2 or 3 times a week about things that I care about. Go follow me on Twitter. Right? That's where you need to be.
But I've noticed a lot of these kids, they have hundreds and hundreds of friends on Facebook, and it's almost sometimes like a competition. Like I have more friends than this person or whatever. And I think
that's stuff we could get into in the next podcast. For sure.
Yeah,
the competitive nature of social media.
Yeah. Well, let's come back to the core topic again, and then let's wrap this up. Has the internet overall made the world less intelligent?
I'm gonna say yes for most of the reasons we've discussed. Like I wish it was designed a different way. Like it has so many positives or potential positives. But I think the over-under is that generally as a society, we're getting stupider.
Yeah. I fully 100% agree with that take. I feel like the average citizen of not just the United States, but of every country, they have been sucked into a disinformation campaign of some kind that they don't realize that they're in. And because of that, the world is absolutely less intelligent or less educated, I'll say. What do you think?
Well, like I said earlier, I think it has absolutely had that effect on some people, and then I think other people have used it to their advantage and gained knowledge and objectivity and whatnot.
Yeah. I agree with that. I'm saying
as a whole,
yeah.
I do tend to think it's made people
made our society dumber.
Yeah. Has it made the world dumber or less intelligent or less educated? And I think the answer
maybe a good word is less wise.
Less wise, yeah, for sure.
Agreed. Because there's definitely a difference between wisdom and intelligence,
right?
And wisdom often comes with experience.
Yeah. I'll never forget with my son Dustin when he was he was like 7 or 8 years old. We were in the garage and he was hammering on a nail, like it was a little short like nail, just hammering it into a board. And I said, "Son, take a pair of needle nose pliers and hold that nail with it and hit the hammer with the needle nose. Hold it while you're holding it with the needle nose pliers. Otherwise, you're going to bust your thumb."
Right.
And he's like, "You don't know what you're talking about." And I'm like, "You know why I'm telling you this is because I've made this. I made this mistake." And he wouldn't listen to me. And the next thing you know, like 5 minutes later, I hear, "Ah!" He smashed his thumb with the hammer. And it's like, remember when I told you to use the needle nose pliers? That's not about intelligence. That's about wisdom. It's about, I made that mistake before.
Yeah.
I know what's going to happen. I'm trying to keep you from making the same mistake, So absolutely. Okay, anything else?
No, I think that's good.
I think we covered it. Yeah.
I think we did. This is a good episode too. And we didn't go as much down the political path as I thought we might.
We were careful.
We were careful, and again, we say this, and we have said this in previous podcasts. I just want to make sure to repeat it again, and that is, we want to try our hardest not to push any specific religious ideology or political ideology or anything like that. Like, we want you to make up your own decisions based upon your own information. We are trying to keep it as neutral as possible, but when some political party or somebody like that makes a statement that is absolutely false, we're going to point it out.
Yeah, so. It's difficult to be completely neutral all the time, but we're trying not to have a specific agenda with this and just kind of enjoy the conversation.
Absolutely right. So, all right, guys. Well, we think, we're not sure yet, but we think that social media and its effects, along with how it actually works, because I think a lot of people don't actually know how social media works, will probably be our next podcast. If not, it will definitely be in the next 2 or 3 episodes, I suspect. So we'll see you then.